Well, hello, hello. Let me know as we start to get some folks in here, get some faces on the screen. Happy, what is it, Thursday? Happy Thursday, is this right?
Hi. It is Thursday.
The unbelievable Sandra Nickel, like one of my favorite humans on the whole planet.
I was one of your favorite humans.
You are. She is one of them though. But you are. Well, that is perfect. Now that I know that we have a non Maryland only crew, we can ask this first question of if you're on right now, let us know where you're joining us from. Where are you joining in from? Throw it in the chat there. I think we got people in multiple time zones on this today. I guess I should put in the chat that I'm in Austin, Texas, right? Would that be?
You are in Austin, Texas, although we will both be in Las Vegas shortly.
That's right. Anybody wants to, who's going to be meeting us in Vegas? I wonder. Actually, we have 3 time zones represented just
so far.
And I. So there we go.
Perfection.
Fantastic. Well, hop on in. We'll get started. Throw in the chat. Where are you joining from? And we look forward to connecting here. I guess I should actually pull up the chat so I can see it. We got Pittsburgh represented. I like it.
I like it even more.
Yeah, you do like it more. I don't like it. Like I've never been there like it, but I like it because
you've actually never been to Pittsburgh, Seth?
I know, isn't that?
That is a travesty.
I don't think that I have.
Rachel Schaefer, we're coming to town.
Just so everybody knows, if you're in the right spot, right? Like from a mental perspective, what we're talking about today is the challenges that we all have, owners of businesses, which if you're on this Zoom, it's you're in management or you're in ownership. And it's like we're all moving from the world of I do it and everything is on my shoulders to we do it and it feels like a team. And then there's this aspirational goal of wouldn't it be amazing if someday whoever they are, do it, and wouldn't business be amazing that way? And that is the journey that we're all on, every one of us. And that's a bit of what we're gonna talk about today. Again, put in the chat where you're in from. We'd love to know. And who knows, you might say something like Pittsburgh and somebody's going to have a referral for you. So that's fantastic. And then I do want to know, do you currently have a team, right? So there's actually a lot of people on this call are going to be real estate. Not everybody's real estate. But when you think about if you have a team, think about your current size. And if you're in a bigger organization, maybe kind of what your leadership team is. And just so we get a sense, my next hire will be team number what? So if you don't have a team right now, then your next hire, you would type 1 in the chat. My next hire will be team number 1 because you don't have a team right now. But if you do have a team and you've got 1 admin, and your next hire will be team member number 2. And then your next hire is going to be what? Is it going to be a sales hire? Is it going to be admin? You're not sure. So put in the chat a number. This next team member will be hire number what inside of your organization. And I don't mean like I've hired 15 admin that have never worked out, so this is lucky number 16. It's more like you're getting admin number 1 correct for the 16th time. Katrina, let me know what you're seeing there. Oh, I got a team member number 6. I like this.
Number 6, 3 with the ops manager and admin is next.
I like it. People still coming on in here.
But I think that point that you had there is a good point, that a lot of times when we say you're kind of your first hire, people think like the first time I've ever hired somebody, and it's not. It's like, who is that key person? Who's that right hand? And how do you find what do they like, etc. And sometimes you've got other people around you on the team and you're hiring that first hire, that person who is your right hand.
Yeah. That's a great point. I'll jump back a slide here, maybe. I think what you're saying, Katrina, like, you were not our first hire, but I would kind of say you're our first hire, right? Like you were the hire that for Alice and I, it really changed the trajectory of our world. And we are so grateful that we've been able to be in business with you for so long. And it changes things. Well, think of this a little bit like announcements at church, I suppose. Save the date, a couple upcoming workshops. So we'll do these at the beginning here just to make sure everybody's got them. If this topic is of interest to you, if the idea of the language of persuasion and neuro-linguistic programming, and what do you say to clients and to team members, I'm going to cover a few fantastic books, and we'll weave in a bunch of NLP content in here as well. But March 6th, save the date, put it on your calendar, scan that QR code, or go to what's the link? I think it's SethDaily.com/ maybe workshops, and that will take you right there to register as well. So there's one. And then Katrina, we are coming back about a month from now, and we are going to dig deep into something that we'll kind of tease on here, and it's going to be behavior assessments. Anything you want to say, like from all these images here?
One of the greatest things that we use in leadership and in hiring and just in life is understanding how people are wired and how do we interact with one another. So this is going to be great for people who are hiring, people who are married, people who want to be married someday, people who want to hire someday, people who work with other people. Just simply the idea of how are you wired, how am I wired, and how can we create synergy in that?
Yeah, I love it. Well, there we go. Sign up for those. We'd love to have you guys back. There'll be some deep dives. What you found is that 2024 came, and Katrina and I have really made a commitment. I'm making it personally. Alice and I are doing this as well, but Katrina and I kind of coming on here at least once a month, maybe even more than that, doing a deep dive into something related to your business that we think can help you. And we have a lot of fun. Hey, this is my family. I am a husband first, a father second, entrepreneur down to realtor next. This is my family. And yet this right here, this is my work family, right? So Katrina is my right hand, and it's fun that our two couples, we get to go hang out in Vegas for a couple days this weekend. That'll be a lot of fun. And we would not be where we are without Katrina. You are absolutely my right hand. And so today, simply put, we could have just said how to hire a Katrina, right? Like that's what we should have said as the slide, but maybe people would not have understood it. How would you want to frame this up for people, Katrina? Like what's our goal for the next hour?
So the goal for the next hour is that in relationships, we know that 1 + 1 can equal way more than 2. We also know that sometimes 1 + 1 equals a -4. And depending on if you get that relationship right. And so many of us don't. And it's funny because I'll hear people like, oh, I hired an assistant, it didn't work out, I'm just never going to hire again. And I'm like, well, did you marry the first person you went out on a date with? And usually the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is yes, but usually the answer is no. So it's about taking some of the mistakes that we've made over the years, mistakes that Seth made before he found me, and then mistakes that we've made together. I mean, we got some doozies of things that we've done wrong. And we know the best way to learn is by making mistakes.
And everybody, just to be clear, when we say we made mistakes with other people. We have plenty of scars with people that either of us or both of us have hired. We have mistakes we've made with each other, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're seeing where a business relationship is a decade in. There are plenty of days where Katrina wants to stab me, and I just try to keep the knives away. We literally have to do it through Zoom, and vice versa. Like the mistakes are real and they happen. It's all learning curve. You got to have a lot of grace for each other. That's for sure. But we want to walk you through some of the mistakes that we've made, things, and a better way to think about it, maybe lessons we wish we had learned sooner. So let's jump right in. The first one, this whole idea of, do you have a job or do you have a business? Now, some people on here are in other careers and they're like, well, it's clearly a business, and that's awesome. So right now I'm talking specifically to real estate agents, where the vast majority of real estate agents are solopreneurs. And Katrina, I think you might have taught me this statement, right? If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. What do you mean there?
I mean, when was the last time you put on a lockbox? Did you order up a sign? What, did you send out your own mailing? Did you put your own listing in the MLS? Any of those things, anything that should be leveraged, and we'll talk about job descriptions later. If you don't have someone doing it for you, you are. And too often I see folks add agents to their team first, and then they're doing those things for the agent. So they're not only their own assistant, they're the assistant of the brand new buyer's agent who's never sold a house.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would also say this way, right? As a solopreneur, when you don't have any of this other type of leverage, all you actually own, it's not a business. It's not a business at that point. You simply own a job. And the path to actually owning a business, which is a mindset shift for a lot of agents, is your mindset has to go from I can do it all myself to I want a team. I want it to be a we can do it to eventually they can do it. And in a way, here's probably why I'm glad we're talking about this. We all have families. We all have people that we love, or we have friends that care about us. And for those people that care about you the most to not resent what you have, you need to gain leverage and time freedom. And I think this is true for everybody on this call. I want the people that matter most to you to get the best of your time. And for that to happen, there's always going to be too much in the world that you could accomplish, but it's going to be too much for one person. But by the way, Katrina, we always joke about this, right? There's a Starbucks right by our office, and we'll go there, and inevitably, and I wonder who here has like been to a Starbucks this week, inevitably the person that will make our lattes is not the same person that takes our money. And if there's ever a reminder to anybody, I mean, guys, we're talking about coffee here. Coffee is such a simple thing, and yet there's two people involved in that. Our friend Tim Heil says it this way: in other successful companies like a Starbucks, one person is never expected to do every role in the life cycle of a deal. And Katrina, why do you think it is? I mean, you consult agents on a regular basis now. Why do you think it is that as agents we have this Superman, I'm going to do it all myself perspective?
I think a lot of it is almost a little bit of a lack of true self-understanding and a lack of trust in others. Because at the end of the day, most clients don't care. Most clients are not, if you tell them, hey, I've got this amazing person who's going to help with all the details of the transaction, they understand that because they're used to the Starbucks, the restaurants, all of those other things. I think some of it comes down to ego, and it's just, there's this idea in our industry of we're going to take it from all the way to the end, from one end to the other. And we know from most other industries that specialists are much more common than generalists. And it's just wrapping your brain around that in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's, by the way, if you have not read a book, we're going to cover a bunch of books at the end. One of them to have on your bookshelf is MREA, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Does not matter what company you're with. This is a book that you should read and you should have. But the book has an org chart, and it kind of looks like this. And what we all think is like, great. So there's the org chart, and there's me right at the top. That's my seat. But the reality is, when you're starting out, and most of the people on this call, what it might feel like is like, this is where I am. I'm in every seat on the bus right now. It can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting. The goal is to kind of chip away at this. And we want to walk you through that a little bit. So mistake number 2, not knowing and focusing on your unique ability. Katrina, what are the top areas? So you coach agents. What are the top areas you focus? Like, guys, stay in your lane, and this is your lane. What is that?
It's pretty simple. Learning, lead generation, lead follow-up, appointments, negotiation, and then I would add a 6th one of leadership when you're at this point that you're hiring. If it doesn't fall into one of those categories, it's not your job. It's someone else's job. I can't think of anything that's not on that list. I would love for somebody to drop something that doesn't fall into one of those categories, but the highest and best use of an agent are those areas. We think about it as the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, that 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts. Those 6 things, they're the top 20%. The other 80, that's why you're here. That's why you're hiring. That's why you're finding your right hand.
Yeah. Give us those 6 again. Learning. I know that's, some people would say like, well, script practice, and you're like, well, it's more than that, right? Mm-hmm. So go from the top again.
So in script practice, some of that is a little bit of learning in practice rather than in the field. I think too often we get into the conversations, we get into the listing appointment, the buyer consult, et cetera, and we don't know what to say. And that's because we didn't practice. We didn't learn. We didn't spend the time learning the things we needed to learn so that when we went up to swing the bat, we knew how to hold it and we knew how to swing it. So the first is learning skills, really. The second is lead generation, then lead follow-up, and they are 2 separate things. I was just in a conversation with an agent this morning who said, I don't have a pipeline. And when we went through it, she does. She just hasn't been following up properly on it. So lead generation, lead follow-up, appointments, face-to-face with people. That can be a consult, that could be a showing, that could be their closing, anything where you're face-to-face with humans, a client event, appointments and negotiation. And then once you get to the point of leadership, when you get to the point of hiring, leadership, how am I leading the people on my team?
Yeah. So in a way, you can almost think about this in reverse, right? If those are things you should be doing, what should you delegate? And this is key. Write down the words a not to-do list. We all have to-do lists. But what I want to know is put in the chat me if you have a not to-do list. So what are the things that you do not do and they are actually on a list for you? It might be I don't mow the lawn. It might be I don't do laundry. It might be something related to business. What is on your not to-do list? Here's one of the ways that, and if you've got a piece of paper, I want you to, I'm going to give you a quick chart to draw, and later on here, I'll give you a QR code. You can scan it, and we'll give you a PDF version of this that you can print out. But here's the main concept. I would sit down with anybody, or I'd sit down in any role that I have, and I would draw two axes. So this is the first one from top to bottom of the page, right in the middle, low dollar productive to high dollar productive. This is we're still on mindset. We need to know of all of the things that we do during a day, what is the lowest dollar productive to highest dollar productive? And I'd give you an example here. I went in to go see a spine surgeon because I had a herniated disc a couple of months ago. And so the doctor walks in, and what happened, I'm like, oh my God, I got to try and sneak a picture here. And this dude's going to end up in a webinar someday. So here he is. I don't remember his name, but he's ended up in a webinar. So here's what happened. The doctor walks in, and if you see that young lady on the far right of the screen, as soon as he walks in, she walks in behind him, pulling this cart along, and she's typing. And he was the consummate surgeon in the conversation. He sat down. He had never, you could tell, he had never looked at my chart before. Well, actually, I knew that because they had just done the MRI in the room next door. So he comes in, he looks at the chart, he speaks to me, and then he stands up and he walks out of the room, and she finishes up. And maybe you love that. Maybe that story actually makes your skin crawl. I loved every bit of it, because for me, it was like, that's how I want to be in my business. I want to be the surgeon that is coming in and doing only the parts that I can do. So I want you to think about inside of your business, what does it look like for you to be the surgeon? And then I want you to start to think about, and the surgeon, by the way, that's high dollar productive. And then I want you to start to think about, what do you hate and what do you love inside of your business? So here might be an example of what this looks like, right? For me, transaction management would be like the low dollar productive and the stuff that I hate, right? So I put it in the bottom left corner. Taking listing photos. Now, this actually isn't me, but somebody on here, this could be, where you're like, you know what? It's therapeutic. I love taking listing photos. I'm kind of fancy myself an amateur photographer. Katrina, do you remember that agent that
Yeah, with the
did their own
sign.
signs?
Yeah, we would ask him, how was your week this week? Oh, great. I had a great week in real estate. Well, what did you do? I made some new signposts, and I like turned them on a 3/4 lathe, like all of this. Like, you're not doing real estate, you're doing woodwork.
Yeah, he actually built his own signpost, which is awesome. That sounds very therapeutic, but don't think of that as being high dollar productive, right? That falls there right in the bottom right quadrant. That is stuff that you love, that is low dollar productive.
That's
Now,
called a hobby.
totally. Now, the upper left and the upper right, what they have in common is that they are above the line. They're both productive, right? Like I do not like FSBOs or calling FSBOs as I don't like that as lead generation. I would much rather, I mean, Katrina, we got how many hundreds of people coming to a client party in a couple of weeks here?
500 or so, yeah.
If they don't kick us out, right? We'll see if the fire marshal shows up. But we've got a whole bunch of people coming to a client party. Those calls for us are a lot more fun than calling for sale by owners. They both work. You can build business both ways. But for us, the highest productive use of our time that we love has been client parties. And so again, wherever you are right now, if you've got a piece of paper in front of you, all you have to do is draw the axis and start to fill it out. And here's the secret. Your goal is to live in this upper right quadrant of whatever that means for you. And your goal is to get support and assistance and delegation of everything else, starting with what is in the lower left quadrant for you. Anything else you want to say on this, Katrina?
Yeah, part of what I will see people make the mistake of is they're like, well, if I had to choose between calling FSBOs and transaction management, I would choose transaction management. So let me hire somebody to call FSBOs. that's still a high dollar productive activity. Lead generation is one of the last things that you outsource when you leverage. It's not one of the first.
Yeah. By the way, raise your hand in the chat or say me if you also have salespeople on your team. I know there's a few people out there that do. If you have salespeople on your team, we use this same conversation with our team members, right? Now, if they're the right team member in that role, when you get up in the upper right-hand quadrant of stuff that they know for them is the highest productive thing and stuff that they love, it's got to be a sales type skill. And we teach those team members to delegate out everything else to the other operations team that we have in place.
Indeed.
So, all right, mistake number 3, not knowing when to hire. Katrina, what do you say here on like, people are coming to you like, should I hire? Should I not? I don't know when. How do you answer it?
Yeah, the wheels generally come off the bus at about 36 to 40 units. And people say, well, I can do 3 units a month. You actually can. Most people can all by themselves. Problem is, it's not 3 units a month. It's 7 units this month and 1 unit next month. And it's having that person who will help you. You can't do the 7 by yourself. So having that around 36 units is when you really should start thinking about that. Or 300,000 in GCI. And that comes from just a metric of you should be spending and I think we're talking about this later on, about 20% of your GCI on your people on leverage. And that's 300,000 is a $60,000 salary. It's a good pay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might not even be just one person, although really we think that's probably about the benchmark in most markets for that full-time executive assistant, right? Starting out. And by the way, hire scaffolding sooner. People might be like, what is scaffolding? Scaffolding is the hires that you make to support your business as you get up to that run rate. So for some people, scaffolding might look like a contract to close transaction management service. It might look like just a little bit of VA support on particular roles in their business. Any other scaffolding? Well, I mean, the photographer is scaffolding, right? Like the person putting up the sign is scaffolding. Those are all scaffolding services that we use and we don't even think about it. Anything that you'd add on scaffolding?
Sometimes your scaffolding is in your personal lives to allow you to have more time in your business world. So it might be hiring Instacart to deliver your groceries instead of going to the store, a house cleaner, a lawn person, fluff and fold. What are those things in your personal world that it's just time sucks that you could hire somebody for minimum wage, hire a high school student after school to go do those things and free you up to be in front of people and building more business.
Yeah. And, I think the last thing I'd say here is hire as soon as you have a business owner's mindset. Alice had gotten into real estate. She was in real estate about 6 months, and we are already looking for our first hire. Now, it was not because she was at 36 units or 300,000 in GCI, but we already had the mindset going in that we were going to treat this like a business, and we wanted leverage, and we wanted to grow into that as quickly as we could. So along with number 3 of when to hire, let's talk about, the mistake of not budgeting for a hire. So Katrina said a minute ago, this plan on 20%. And this is actually a really, really simple rule of thumb. So here's what I want you to do. You can put it in the chat if you want to, or you can just write it down for yourself, but put what your GCI was last year. So write down somewhere what your GCI was last year. And if you're not inside of real estate, sorry, I have no idea if this is applicable. I'd love to talk one-on-one because I love cross-referencing different industries. I think some of it actually is. But for real estate, we're pretty dialed in that plan on 20% of your GCI towards leverage. Now, that's a broader word than just admin hires that work for you, but put 20%. And here's what I want to know. If you made $100,000 last year, did you spend $20,000 on people helping you do that? If you made $400,000 last year, did you spend more or less than $80,000 in leverage from that? What we found is that if people are not spending that 20%, right? They say, Katrina, I'm in awesome shape. I only spent 10%. Then that's when you have that conversation of that's because you became the assistant again, right? Mm-hmm. And then talk to me about this whole robbing from your business with your personal lifestyle. Like, where do you see this show up for people?
So for a lot of people, they get into real estate, they're making that 70, 80, even maybe sometimes $100,000 salary. And that felt really good. And they had their lifestyle built upon that. And as their business grows and as their GCI grows, their lifestyle grows as well. They go out and they buy the bigger car. They buy the above 6,000 pound car to depreciate, but it's a higher car payment and more maintenance and all of the things there that upgrade their lifestyle. I literally just had this conversation with an agent last week, looking through the numbers from last year. The GCI was $350,000. I said, you are at the point that you need to hire somebody. This particular agent said, I can't afford that. What are you talking about? I can't afford to spend 60, 70 grand on people. And I said, where'd the money go? And when we dug deeper, it didn't go to the business. It went to the personal. It went to buying more, traveling more, doing more. And really, his personal lifestyle is robbing the business of growth, because at the point where he is, he can do no more without help. So either A, he has to decide, I am good with things exactly as they are, or I'm going to have to cut back on the travel. I'm going to have to cut back on some of the things that I'm doing this year that I did last year in order to be able to fund that. And the funny thing is, though, for most people, if that 70 grand just had never been direct deposited into his account, he wouldn't have missed it. So figure it really operating in as a business of, you have those things and it's totally separate. Your personal lifestyle is built around a budget of what you're drawing from the business, and the other pieces go, you choose if you need to take other draws as well.
Yeah. And so another rule of thumb there, people, write down 40%. If you are living on more than 40% of your GCI, then you are probably at the beginning stage of the career where you don't have a big team, you don't have a lot of overhead. That's great. But what it's going to do eventually is it's going to rob your ability to actually grow a business, because you're going to get accustomed to that lifestyle. The goal would be of a larger real estate team, or a real estate team that is actually investing in infrastructure, that of the 100% that's out there, there are costs of sales, there's costs for support, and 40% is the profit number that we shoot for. So if you can keep your lifestyle at 40% of your GCI, you're creating room for yourself to grow. And if you want to go deeper into this stuff, we've got that financial deep dive. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Put a slide up here in a second. We'd love to have you join us in that. We're going to dig in for 3 hours on with a group of people more specifically on this, and we'd love to have you. And then let's talk also on these pay scales. So let me jump ahead here. Can you afford administrative help? I would almost argue that you cannot afford not to have administrative help. Here's a very, actually, I don't know if I can do the calculation of the dollar per hour without a whiteboard here, Katrina. Here's what I tell people. Take your GCI, take 20% of that number, like we talked about, and that amount, set that aside for somebody somehow helping you. If that number doesn't add up to a full-time salary, that's when you're hiring scaffolding support, you're hiring VAs. But if that number is a full-time salary, like that is your person. Then you take the remaining 80%. And what we found is that we can spend 20% of our time to make 80% of the money. That is your true dollar per hour. There's a worksheet. If you message me on it, I'll send you that worksheet that talks about it a bit more. But 20% of your time can make you 80% of your money. And when you consider that, the average person that's making $100,000 in GCI, what they're really doing is that they have a few hours in their week where they are incredibly high dollar productive at about $200 an hour. But they have other parts of their week where they're making $12.50 an hour. And when you identify what that low dollar per hour is, that's your goal, to find somebody, to hire somebody to take over that role for that cost. And it's not a cost, it's an investment. Katrina, if you're talking with people, like I know you talked through the MRA budget, can you walk people through how you arrived at 20% and then this whole like admin and lead gen expenses on there?
Yeah, of course. The MRA says 12 to 15% for administrative. So how do we get to that 20%? For me and for most of the people who I coach and who I work with, a very large portion of their lead generation has to do with their database, their sphere of influence, client events, pop buys, all of those pieces that they're not necessarily pouring as many dollars into as much as they're spending time on. So let's take the client event we're having at Skateland. It's actually not very cost prohibitive at all. It's time intensive. Yeah. So having that person who's going to take care of making sure the invitation is there, coordinating with Skateland, ordering the pizza, getting it all set up, all of those things, all of those pieces are so important to take care of. And it's not, that's lead generation for us. A team, if you're the kind of person that you say, I'm spending tons of money on paid leads, perhaps you're dialing back your administrative because it's more of just the transaction manager, unless that person is going to do events and manage your database as well. We'll talk some about the hats that different administrative people wear later on as well.
Yeah. Well, because Katrina, I mean, in that sense, right? If they're paying for paid leads, what you don't see is that you're really paying for this administrative leverage through somebody else to do some of that. So that's why I think depending on your business model, you can lump these things together. If you are getting ready to hire, I forgot to cover this, 3 months reserves for the position, then lead with revenue. The reality is sometimes you can put too much stress on the position. If you hire for the position, you're like, all right, I got, 2 weeks worth of payroll to pay you. And other than that, you better start creating more productivity. That's unrealistic. But 90 days is a very realistic number to imagine that a new position is going to start to move the needle on revenue.
I had somebody once come to me and say, well, my administrative person, I heard that they should help. They're going to bring in an additional 24 deals per year. And I said, excuse me, your administrative person is going to bring in 24 deals. I said, yeah, well, the model is I can do 36 on my own. And with a great admin, we'll do 60. I said, yes, that is the model. And it's not because that person is bringing in 24 deals. Why would they take a $50,000 salary from you if they were lead generating to get 24 deals a year?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. It's they are freeing up your time to go lead generate from more. That person is not the person who wants to pick up the phone to invite the people and love on them at Skateland, but they are the person who's going to make sure that party goes off without a hitch. That's how you get that extra there. So it's freeing up your time. If what you do with the time that you freed up is go play more golf and you don't make more money, don't blame that on the administrative person. That's because you made that choice.
Well, it goes back to that quadrant, right, that we covered a few minutes ago. Like if you hire somebody to do that lower left quadrant, in that case, it was, contract to close or transaction management, and you spend your time shooting listing photos or woodworking on your new signs instead of the stuff that was at the top of that line, the high dollar productive, then it's not going to actually move the needle. You have to spend the time that it gets freed up, spend a majority of that time on high density lead generation activities. Good versus great, often $1,000 a month. I don't remember who we heard this from, Katrina, but it was gold when we did. And if you are in the spot where you're hiring at this administrative level, we found this just to be a game changer. How do you explain this now to agents?
Yeah, I mean I will often see people, I want an amazing person for the cheapest possible rate.
Yeah.
And we'll go a little bit into emerging, proven talent, et cetera. But often I will hear it voiced as, hey, I need somebody just like you. How can I find somebody like you who will work between 20 and 40 hours, depending on what my business needs, and take $35,000 a year? And I say, you can't. Right. That's just not who you're going to find. You can find some of those pieces. Well, most of us here work with buyers and sellers, and it's kind of like that buyer. You say size, style, location, condition, price. They've got to be able to rank them. You as an agent have to be able to rank it as well. And the easiest one to move the needle on is price. You are going to get a much higher quality candidate if you up the price just slightly, just like you're going to get a much higher quality house if you up your price.
Yeah. And so think about that at kind of that 36,000, 48,000. 60,000, like those, you get completely different candidates at different pay scales there. And that is a difference of $1,000 a month. You get what you pay for. Now, 1099s versus W-2, this is not a tax course, although happy to dig into that more with people as helpful. Interestingly, we just went through our first audit on this, right, Katrina? Thank goodness we were totally clean, but we actually had what department of government actually did that audit? Was that
government?
Yeah, somebody from the government. And they wanted to make sure that we were not paying people as 1099s that should have been W-2s. That is a big no-no. We've been doing it right the whole way along, thank goodness. But guys, if you have admin and you were telling me they're 1099, I would be very concerned about getting audited. And happy to have an offline conversation with anybody on that. There's rules that you want to follow. There's certain parameters on there, but we are talking for the most part about admin that when they're full-time for you, that are very much W-2 employees.
The other piece there
is 1099.
Hourly versus salary. That's also where I'll have people like, well, I'll just put them on a salary and then I'll work them 80 hours a week. That also, there's very specific rules, and we can deep dive on that in a different conversation if someone has more questions. And in general, this first hire is going to be W-2, and often it's going to be hourly, and it will eventually become salary.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
eventually it becomes salary. I think the litmus test we've used is when they start to manage other people. Is
Yeah.
that still what you'd say?
Yep. So the HR law litmus test is managing people or managing the finances. If they can make financial decisions independent of you, they can be on a salary. But if they're not managing people and they're not managing finances, they can't be that a salary doesn't make as much sense. The finance is the easier one to kind of get around if you don't have as many people.
Be very careful. This goes back to our war wounds. We have learned this the hard way.
Yes.
Yeah, crazy town. Hey, scan this if you're interested. That we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but if you want to dig deeper into getting your financial house in order, we are doing a deep dive on this. Grab this QR code, or we'll throw a link in the chat there if you want more information on that. Katrina, the 4 compensation questions. Now, maybe you can go through them briefly here, and we'll find another time to deep dive on it. But how do you use these? Like, just script these out for people.
Yep. So if I'm meeting with somebody who I'm looking to hire, I'm going to ask them the questions, and I actually use the terms survival, stability, success, and significance, which we got from Brian Buffini in A Different World. I say everybody has 4 numbers. The first number is survival. That's where you are making ends meet. And sometimes there's money at the end of the month, and sometimes there's a month at the end of the money. And your hope is that they will even one another out, but you're not doing anything fancy. You're just paying your bills. The stability is you're doing some of the things like sometimes you can go away on vacation. Sometimes you can go out to dinner, kind of those other like living a decent stable life, but you're not doing anything crazy. Success is you're living the good life. You know, you're going away with your spouse for, you're going to Jamaica. You're not concerned that if your car breaks down, you're not going to be able to fix it or buy something new. And then significance is that's the dream number. You can do whatever you want. You can also give whatever you want. You really kind of live in the lifestyle that you want. And everyone has 4 different numbers for that. And I would love to walk through for you, what are those for you? Some people have them as monthly. Some people have them as yearly. And I ask them their numbers. People are like, oh my gosh, people give that to you? They do. They do give you those numbers. And that helps you to understand you should not base your salary on their number. That's actually illegal, by the way. Yep. If the job is worth 50,000, then you should be offering them 50,000, even if their survival number is 30. The question becomes, if the job is 50 and I know their survival is 60, I don't want to hire somebody at a level below their survival number because I want them to live in success. I don't want them to live behind survival. We also know that people, when they're stressed about money, that their performance is lower. So that's more of, I want to make sure that the role that I have is going to fit their financial needs.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Okay. By the way, we did mention earlier, scaffolding, talk about virtual assistants, strategic leverage. Here's a link if you are in the Baltimore area, most specific. Well, yeah, I guess all specifically, like here's Further Faster Services where our team does this for agents inside of our brokerage, and a few outside of the brokerage. So click there if you want more information. But Katrina, just as a general comment, where do you, when people are saying like, I don't know, maybe I want to hire virtual, maybe I want to hire local in office, like how do you even help them think through that?
So I think we talked a little bit in this somewhere about thinkers versus doers. If you are looking for a doer, a virtual assistant very well might work. If you're looking for somebody to take some of the thinking off of your plate, generally I find virtual assistants, that's not their strong suit. Their strong suit is, here's a standard operating procedure. I need this done 100 times. I did it once and I documented exactly what I did. Now do it the other 99 times. They're great with that. But they're not going to be the kind of person who's going to say, hey, Sally emailed last week inquiring about selling her house. Did you follow up with her? They're not going to be the person who takes thinking off of your plate. They're going to take doing off of their plate. I find often a virtual assistant is the leverage for that first right-hand admin. The virtual assistant is not your first right-hand admin.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure that somebody who's watching this has an amazing VA and they would, take issue with this. And that's awesome. I think generally what we're describing is that if you experience any sort of barrier of discussion, like if language is a barrier, or just vernacular is a barrier, and thinking, if you don't have somebody that is your right hand, that when you talk with them, you feel like they complete your sentences, or they could, they're probably not going to be your right hand that is really going to take a whole bunch of stuff off your plate. So I've just never actually seen a VA overseas be somebody's right hand long term. I've seen it absolutely be scaffolding, and I've seen it become leverage for their right hand. I've just never seen it be their actual right hand. Now, let's separate that out from virtual. We'll even just call it remote working inside of the US. Your right hand might be low. I mean, here, Katrina and I, we work together, and now I spend the majority of my time in Austin, Texas. Katrina's still my right hand in Baltimore. I don't know if that would have worked out if we had started the relationship that way, Katrina. I don't know, right? But it certainly can be done. It's just a lot harder.
I also think it's the question is, what are you solving for?
Yeah.
And back in the day when I first started, 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was, I would go make sure that the vacant houses that we had, because it took more than 2 days to sell a house, that when it got cold, that the heat was on, and that the lock boxes were on properly. And if I had been in a different state, Seth would have been doing that job. Seth still would have been the assistant. So that's where some of it is, the things that you're taking off your plate, what requires somebody to be in person. And if there's enough of it, it requires them to be in person, you need that person to be local.
You need them live. All right. Moving on, maybe a little bit faster. All right, mistake number 5, not knowing who you are looking for or where to find them. So we'll give a couple phrases here. We're going to blow through some slides, and there'll be a few handouts that we'll send you guys later. Appreciate you being on. So one is, you have a missing persons report to find them. Think of this like that milk jug, or the sign at the, I don't know, the post office, right? The missing person. Like if you just talk to somebody at a networking event and you say, hey, I'm looking for my right hand, I'm looking for an admin, would you know how to describe them briefly? Do you have a job description? And this is, I mean, Katrina, how many times does somebody say, I want to hire somebody? And we'll just say, great, send me the job description. And they're like, well, it's not really written down. And that lack of clarity creates so many problems. We'll have you share in a second on the roles of the executive assistant, specifically inside of a real estate company. But what I want people to think about is, like, what are the big rocks, right? That this position that must be done for somebody to be nailing it in this position. So here's, I think, kind of the way that you outline it. What would you say here?
Yeah, so each of these are not put in order of importance.
Yep.
They are just 6 different areas that I find administrative people work in. And for each person, they're going to rank these differently. Your administrative person might do all of them. If you're a really, really large team, you might have somebody who only each bucket might have one person in it. And that's totally fine as well. The idea of marketing and database manager, who is making sure that your people, your sphere of influence, are being taken care of, marketing you as a real estate entity, not necessarily marketing your listings, but here we are, we're here to help, we're here to help you sell houses. Leads and pipeline manager, that's the person who's saying, hey, Sally called, did you follow up with her? What's the next step? They're making sure things move through the pipeline. Listing manager, that's the person who you go on a listing appointment and you get the listing paperwork signed, and they take care of they prep you for the appointment. Then they take care of all of the pieces, all of the details. You then negotiate the contract, and they take care of all of the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Transaction manager takes over after it goes under contract. Again, everything but the negotiations falls on their plate. That's a really easy one usually to get scaffolding on. Most markets have independent transaction managers who will help. And further faster is that for Baltimore as well. Financial manager, this is the person who's taking care of making sure that everything is tracked, your income, your cost of sales, your expensive. And then just kind of the overall administrative manager, that air traffic controller, the one who is seeing things come in and making sure that things are taken care of, whether the rainmaker, they need to remind the rainmaker to do it, or they're doing it for them themselves. I would say on this, the last one that I would recommend leveraging out is the financial side, just simply because you need to keep an eye on your money. And we've had too many people steal from us. So that's the last one I'd say to leverage out.
Yeah, absolutely. Or we actually leverage that out. Like, we have a bookkeeper, right? But it's almost like this read-only access. Watch your money. And lesson of any person who runs an organization is, you need to keep an eye on the money. And Katrina, I think what's interesting is we've had times where our admin team is 4 or 5 deep. So we've got like almost a person in every seat here. There's no clear-cut rule of like who is going to get promoted or who's sort of going to lead the whole team. But oftentimes we'll find that as you grow an organization, somebody stands out that not only are they doing their role at a high level, maybe they're handling, 3 of these roles at a high level, but they also just have this like leadership edge that they begin to lead their peers, and then all of a sudden they start to lead the team. And that's, I mean, in a way, that's your role. You didn't get to where you are because of seniority or just you've been there the longest. Like these are all opportunities that you earned along the way. What do you notice when people kind of rise to that occasion, or I don't know, anything you'd say on that?
If you hire an administrative person and then you think I need more help, I'm going to hire somebody else who answers to me. You generally don't have a leader in place, you have a doer, which is fine. But that next hire should probably be a leader, because you are not administratively talented. And Seth Daly, like I'm looking at you in the eyes, square in the eyes, like Seth shouldn't manage administrative people.
I'm really bad at it. Sorry to all the people on this call that I manage in air quotes. I'm terrible at it.
Yes, right. So he like having that cognizance of, if you're thinking I need a flat org chart where everyone answers to me, that's because you haven't hired a leader yet. Go put that on the job description.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so a couple of other things to consider, right? And some of these will be deeper than others. Are you hiring a doer or a thinker? So you used that language earlier. Gary Keller has a line inside of MREA of like, does this person take tasks off your plate, or do they take thinking off of your plate? And if you find that at night or during the day, you're the only one thinking about something, and somebody else just comes in and says, all right, what do you want me to do right now? All they're doing is taking a task off your plate. That's not nearly as skilled and not nearly as hard and not nearly as rewarding as somebody who will take a thinking task off of your plate. Personality, behavior types are you looking for? We'll come to that in a second. Are they potential, emerging, or proven talent? Or we'll jump into all of these actually. So behavior assessments. So the first one that people are probably used to, and we're going to do a deep dive on these in a couple of weeks or about a month, is the DISC assessment, right? 4 main types. Well, one that's a little bit deeper is the Myers-Briggs. That's where you get these like 4 letters. These are good. We tend to take people through, and probably we would almost take anybody on this call through one of these if they ask nicely, right? Like we take people through something called the KPA. So I'm going to show people just what that looks like. And now, Katrina, what do you want to say about either the KPA or any of the rest of them? I know you love these.
I think it's understanding the KPA. The reason why we like that is it describes who they are and then how they fit with the specific position. So you'll see in front of you, you're looking at how Seth fits his job and how I fit my job. You'll see that we're both high fits for what we're doing right now. We both have things that we're not great fits for. So it helps you understand who that person is and how they'll interact with a specific position. But having that understanding of, because a lot of people are like, well, my admin should be an S, right? I mean, I'm not an S, and Seth hired me to be his admin, but he hired me to be that thinker leader, taking things off of his plate rather than the doer. And yet Holly, who I think is on this call, she's absolutely has a lot of S in her. She creates incredible steadiness in our organization, or Heather, who's on here, created incredible steadiness in our organization, which is what we were looking for when we hired those individuals. And so it depends on what are you looking for? You need to know what you're looking for to know if the person's a fit.
So like there's 2 ways to understand personality types when you're hiring. Way number 1 is what is the role require, right? What are they going to be doing day to day? And you got to understand, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want somebody, if you're like, well, I'm really abrupt with people and I want somebody with super great bedside manner, right? So I want them to just coddle everybody on the phone. I want them to be super nice. And then when they do that, you come in and you yell at them like, why are you wasting so much time on the phone? Not that I've ever done this, but maybe it has happened before. But if this is you, right, you're like, well, wait a minute, you want it both ways. You want them to be super sweet and calm and steady with people, but then you wonder why that conversation took them so long. It took them so long because that's how to have that good bedside manner. So the first thing is figuring out, what do you actually want the behavior in the role to be, and figure out a job match, a job fit that kind of tells you that, right? So we're just showing you a few that are like pre-programmed, but in a way you could do this yourself. Now, then the next thing to look at is not just how does the person or how do you fit a role, but the next thing to look at is how do you fit with each other? So that's why we put this one up. So now you're seeing Katrina and I, we are like literally the same person.
It's kind of creepy. It's super creepy, actually.
This actually doesn't even help explain the point, right? Because I should have brought one up here that there's a lot more like diversity on it or division between them. But I'll give you an example, right? And this is the closest example we've got. Optimism. I am about as low as they come on optimism. Katrina is middle of the road. So what could that sound like? That could sound like we're in a conversation and Katrina's had a really hard week and she tells me a whole bunch of things. And I find like the one thing that she could have done better. And I'm like, well, how about that? Now I'm just finding like cracks on the Liberty Bell is how somebody would say it, right? I don't mean to do that. I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just I naturally am skeptical of like, is this really going to happen? Is that contract really going to close? Is that person really going to join? And could you just like give me a break here? Like, can you just be a little bit optimistic and smile? Like, is that how it feels from your side, Katrina?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. And another example is that we have both found, if you look at our numbers, it's the fourth one down for responsiveness that's really high. And the second one down is intensity and it's really high. And somewhere you're going to see number one, assertiveness. And we're both pretty high in that. And I don't know about y'all, but that generally shows up like a bull in the china shop in a lot of cases. And what we have found is that when somebody is super low on most of those, it can be a challenge in our relationship, and that somebody who we're going to work with really, really closely, even if the job says super low is okay, our personal interaction requires them to be a little bit higher because we're running 100 miles an hour and them running 20 miles an hour. We're just never going to be going the same speed.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, as an organization grows, I mean, if it's you and one admin, you've got to pay so much attention to this because this can be the make or break of like, is the relationship working? If it's not, by the way, I know there's some people on here that actually are operations managers for a team. I would say like, when's the last time you sat down with both of your KPAs or both personality assessments and went through them, not to say, should we still work together, but just like, it's almost like business marriage counseling. It's like, how do we work through this the best with each other? And it starts by understanding who you are. And again, we're going to do a deep dive on this for an hour in March, and we love to talk through that with you. But there you go. We could talk about the KPA all day. We won't. Katrina, you mentioned talent earlier. Talk to us about potential emerging and proven talent.
So I'm just going to use some simple examples for the sake of time. The fresh college graduate who's never had a real job, their potential. The person who is the transaction manager for another team and they want to be hired as your director of operations for your team, that's emerging. They've done the job before, or they're director of operations for a car dealership. They've done the same job in a different field. And proven is you want to hire the director of operations from a different real estate team to be your director of operations. That's somebody who's proven talent. The amount that you're going to have to pay them grows with each one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, well said. Something that we look for whenever, Katrina might come out of an interview and we'll say, well, tell me, I mean, Hungry, Humble, Smart, what do you think? If you do not have this book on your bookshelf, go buy it. By the way, if you work for an organization, go buy this book and read it and make sure that you are hungry, humble, and smart. If you run an organization, monitor your team and yourself of, are we hungry, humble, and smart? And it's fantastic. It's Patrick Lencioni. You can Google it and you'll find this stuff. Again, we could dig into this for hours in and of itself. But what we look for is the combination of these three attributes makes for the ideal team player. And personality assessments aside, if you simply ask the question, are they hungry, humble, and smart means like emotionally smart, like emotionally intelligent. Man, that is what makes an ideal team player. Anything you want to say on there?
No, you said it right.
Yeah, we love that book. Where to search. If you aren't casting a wide net, do you know where to look? And I'll combine that with this next one. When you don't know where to look, you choose from the best of one. How many times, Katrina, have I come to you and be like, hey, I've got somebody, I think that'd be great for this role. And you're like, well, sure. If you want to limit your search to one person, I'm sure they look like a good candidate. Why do we do that? Why is this like human nature in our industry and every other one out there?
Because hiring is hard. It is not fun to go through and talk to all of these different people and have people who are dumb as a box of rocks. Sorry, nobody's dumb. That was
That's
terrible.
right. That's right. Nobody's actually.
Nobody actually is, but a terrible fit for the position, I think is a better way to say it. And the who come to you and you don't want to spend all that time. So when somebody really, you really connect with them, but going back to that behavioral style, often that's somebody who is a really sociable person, really good in a room. That doesn't mean that they're the right person for this particular position. So just making sure that you're evaluating a lot of people.
Yeah. And for us, we have found that we try to cast a wide net with our referrals because they know our business. We found the best cultural fits that way. Sometimes not the best skill fit, but the best cultural fits. And we love to promote from within because that's taking people from that potential talent up through proven talent. And Katrina, the clarifying question, I'm just watching the clock, so I'm going to move this real fast here. But the clarifying question of, is this person talented? What do you ask yourself or me?
Will this person be wildly successful next year with or without me?
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, if they're going to get a promotion where they are, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. If you are thinking that you are going to be the reason that this person becomes successful, you're not thinking about a talented person. You're becoming a savior, right? If they're going to be successful with or without you, now you're talking about somebody who's talented. Mistake number 7 is not having a big vision to attract big talent. And this is that whole idea of like an assistant or an executive assistant can become the assistant executive. I would tell you, take a picture of this or screenshot this. Here's a quote I heard from Brian Buffini years ago. You can double your business as quickly as you can double your self-esteem. That is a statement that when I heard it at first, I thought that related to like sales skills, like knocking on doors or dealing with expireds or FSBOs. But think of this in the context of how you hire people. When you double your self-esteem as what is the business and the organization that you're growing and what is the opportunity you want to create for people that join your world, the caliber of talent that you hire will be much, much bigger. Katrina, you are a process girl. So winging it during the interview, which I have done, and you yell at me about, which you should. What is the process that we walk through? This, I think we're probably going to have a whole nother deep dive on.
Yeah, so there's Keller Williams has a class called Career Visioning that dives into all of this, but you're taking it's just like a sales funnel. A lot of people to a smaller number. And then at the end of that, you have 2 candidates, hopefully, that you think you could hire. You choose one and you set expectations, and that's where then the 90 days begins. But you work each one of their candidates through this process.
Yep. If you look at this again, take a picture, and if you are hiring people and you are not going through all of these steps, I would tell you, like, reach out to us because I'd love to walk you through what you might be missing by missing any one of these steps. They are all critical, but I understand that it can feel overwhelming at first. Mistake number 9, they don't know how to train properly. What we notice here is this: people will hire somebody and say, "Thank God I hired somebody." They throw them in the seat and then they walk away, go on the vacation, experience the burnout they've been experienced, whatever. The reality is there is a 90-day process or, a 100-day process to get somebody from having absolutely not knowing what they're doing to feeling like they are a self-managed individual. And if the most important thing is to have a job description, the second most important thing is to have a 30 and a 60 and a 90-day action plan to know if this person is meeting your expectations and growing into the role.
There's a difference between delegation and abdication. You need to delegate, not abdicate.
Yep, absolutely. And mistake number 10, and this will be kind of your reading list, guys. They aren't willing to invest in becoming a better leader. The law of the lid: your business only grows to the extent that you do. That's a John Maxwell quote. Talent will leave you the minute that you are no longer the best vehicle for their success. And developing leadership skills will become your primary focus. Take a picture of this. These are some books that we would recommend. We've referenced some of them already. There's others on here that we haven't, like Traction and Rocket Fuel. But becoming a leader who reads and listens, you've got to grow in leadership lessons if you actually want to hire amazing talent for your world. Any of those you want to chime in on?
Just that the last one is a podcast that I would suggest to everyone listen to with that person when they hire them, to help them really get to the point that they're making independent decisions in a manner that you would.
Yeah, that one is so good. And mistake number 11, guys, it is so common for us to think about how to do something or what we should be doing, but not who. There's a great book out there called Who Not How. And I heard this quoted a mastermind yesterday. Millionaires think what? What do I need to do? billionaires think who. And when we can get to the point that what we are thinking is, who do we need to help us grow? That's when we know that our mindset has shifted around hiring and growing a team. All right. Katrina, any last comments? Otherwise, I just want to invite people, like, if you want to learn more, and you want a quick, short call with either of us to figure out kind of, all right, how does this apply to your hiring, where you are in your business? We'd love to gift this to you. Like, this is our passion. Our passion is watching teams grow. We love seeing inside the real estate space. Love seeing in every business. And we'd love to dedicate some time to figure out where you're growing and how we can help you. So schedule a discovery call, go to SethDaily.com discovery, or scan that QR code. Anything you want to say on there?
No, I think, again, just going back to the beginning, relationships is where 1 + 1 can equal so much more. And we are really passionate about not only doing it ourselves, but helping others do the same. So happy to talk you through anything that you need to talk through there.
Perfect. And a couple reminders, just so you see them again. March 6th, we're going to be talking about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, the language of persuasion. A couple great books on here we'll talk through. I should put the book Influence up there as well. And then coming on later in March, we're going to talk through personality assessments at a much deeper level. And we'd love to have you for any of those. So we'll stay on here for a couple minutes here for Q&A if anybody has any questions. But otherwise, thank you guys for being on, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Of course. Or there's a space where it's where they say, I've been at this position for the last 5 years, and unfortunately the business isn't growing and I don't have an opportunity to grow. And I like being a part of small business, but I want to be a part of a business that I can help grow. That's a great reason why they should leave, why they're leaving. But in that, I'm separating them into 3 buckets. Bucket number 1 is, nope, not going to talk to you again. Bucket number 2 is, I definitely want to move you forward to the personality assessment. Bucket number 3 is, maybe. So if it's bucket number 1, I say, thanks, I'm doing a lot of these screening calls, and I will get back to you once I'm done with this round of interviews. And then I'll send them an email a day or 2 later saying, thank you, I'm chosen to move forward with other candidates. If they're a definite yes, I say, I would love to meet with you face-to-face. Would you have time to complete a behavioral assessment if I sent that to you? Yep. Okay. And then I walk them through that. And if they're a maybe, I also say, I'm going through with candidates. And by the end of this, I have the goal of sending 5 to 7 that behavioral assessment. So after that I have 4 yeses and 10 maybes, I'm going to go back and look at my maybes and see who I can send that to.
Yeah. So there's step 1, and Colin, feel free to jump in with questions on it. But then the personality / behavioral assessment, the one we're referring to there would be the KPA. There's several others that could be used. We just find this one, to do exactly what we need it to do, right? It gives us an opportunity to set the next appointment that truly is a gift to this person, even if we never end up hiring them, but they might become an A+ in our database. It literally is just giving this person some insight into their behavior. And it's we don't get attached to the person. Like, we're just at the point of, like, we want to understand what makes them tick, how they work, how they think. And this behavior assessment does it. So they take the assessment, which might take them 45 minutes, and then we schedule an hour to do a version of a validation or verification of it. That's a process. If at the end of that, we're like, we still think this person is awesome, then we schedule another hour, or we might have had them block out another hour there. So we might tell them, hey, just block out the afternoon. This might take, at least an hour, maybe a bit longer. So we don't necessarily tell them all the different steps up front. But then we'll go into another session, which is about, it might be about 30 questions. We won't ask every one of them, but we've got just a series of questions from Katrina. Any that stand out to you?
How long are you willing to fail at something before you succeed? Give me an example of a time that you were trained really well, a time that you were trained really poorly. And it's some of the more common questions that you might hear, but it helps me to understand, like, trained really well and trained really poorly. If they say, when I was trained really well, I had everything I did had a step-by-step guideline already spelled out. I just had to follow the process. Depending on which position I'm hiring from, I'd be like, you're the one who's got to create that. I don't have that for you. So it just gives me, even if they're wired correctly, if what they love is to be told what to do and I need them to figure out how to do it, might not be a fit.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the screen here, I just made a space there between personality assessment and long form, because the next part is this career life review and motivational. Those actually, in fact, let me do this again. It'll make it even more clear. Those happen in the next meeting. So we definitely, by this point, you're 2 full hours in with them on one day, or you met them multiple times, and then we schedule another 2-hour conversation. And in a way, we're breaking that 2 hours into two things. We go backwards and we go forward. So we go backwards, and this is where it'd be the closest thing to like reviewing their resume, but it's not just their resume. It's kind of all the stuff that they didn't put on the resume. It's like, hey, let's go back to college, and we start to walk through a series of the highs and lows of their professional life, and some personal stuff weaves in there as well. But we get them from all that up to like what brings them into this conversation today. And then we spend the next hour on the future. Where do they want to be in 3 to 5 years that would be meaningful in all these different areas of life? Katrina, I don't know why I'm even talking. You know this way better than me anyways. Go
Yeah,
for it.
so there's pieces there. So each of these 1 hours, it is true that personality and long form are a 2-hour session. I don't tell them 2 hours. If I get through at the end of the behavioral assessment and I think that they're definitely not a fit, I'm not going to do the next hour. But then when you think about the background of their life and then moving forward, really what I'm looking for is, if they accomplish their goals, am I going to accomplish my goals? If somebody says to me, like just to be very straightforward, I'm a mom of 3 young kids, and I will have people who say, hey, my goal is that I'm getting into real estate because I want all of the flexibility so that I can spend more time with my kids. And there's times that I've looked at somebody and I say, I'm hiring you so I can spend more time with my kids. So there can be a conflict there of, we're not a vehicle for one another's success. As opposed to somebody who says 5 years from now, I want to be running the operation side of somebody else's business. That's beautiful. I love that for that particular position. They might say 5 years from now, I want to be running my own yoga studio. And then I need to decide, am I okay with somebody who 5 years from now is going to be completely outside my industry?
Yeah. So then the last thing on there was what's called the commitment interview. And in a way, and expectations dialogue, this is so critical. I mean, the number of times, well, one, I mean, we've missed it, right, Katrina? Like, we've probably made a shortcut. We just hired somebody, and when things aren't going well, 3 months later, we're like, did we ever do a commitment interview? Like, no, I don't think we did. And this is where we set expectations. One of my favorites is a whole, how do I win with you? How do I lose with you? And when we're doing it now, we do it remote. Now it's like, maybe Katrina might be with the person in person or all on Zoom, but either way, it's like all 3 of us chime in. Katrina and I will start, how does somebody win with me, right? How does somebody lose with me? When a sensitive issue arises, how do you want me to bring it up, right? And we will go around and answer them. Yeah.
Like an example of something that we talk about is that for us, the minute emotion enters the conversation, it gets voice to voice or face to face as quickly as possible. We're not going to text message or email back and forth. You'll see people are like, what do I say next? And they screenshot the messages. You're like, oh my gosh, you just put that in writing. Like, the minute that it gets emotional, we want it to be face to face or voice to voice. And we share that with people.
Yeah. And setting those expectations need to get recalibrated over time. Like, that's actually probably the reality is, how I win with Katrina, how she wins with me, it changes over the years, right? And that's like recalibrating the professional relationships. It's a great tool to use anytime someone feels a little wonky. So I don't know if that helps. I hope it does. Any other questions or any follow-up questions on that?
Thank you. Thanks.
You bet.
Of course.
All right. Awesome, guys. Thanks for being on. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.